The art of Aaron Sorkin is about talking fast, isn't it? I mean, you gave these actors a serious, serious challenge.
God knows they were up for the challenge. And they worked incredibly hard. We also had Danny baked into the budget a luxurious, almost play-like rehearsal period. We did this all up in San Francisco, and we rehearsed just the first act for 2 weeks, and then shot just the first act, then shut down, which you know is an expensive thing to do because you continue paying everybody. Shut down and rehearsed just the second act for 2 weeks, then shot the second act, rehearsed just the third act for 2 weeks, and shot the third act. That way the cast, particularly Michael, was able to concentrate on just one act at a time, and it was still very difficult, but at least was manageable. And I think that rehearsal period is, frankly, what allowed us to do the movie. I don't think that the movie would be as good as it is without that rehearsal time.
So you demanded an actor like Fassbender, especially in this case, who could simply remember all the, I mean, it's like a theater piece in that sense.
Yeah. You got to do more than remember it. You have to own it. It has to be like it's your phone number. Because think of a great musician. You know, if you've ever seen Yo-Yo Ma play, someone of that caliber, it's been years and years and years since they've had to think about the notes, since they've had to think about where their fingers go, and because of that, their greatness is able to take over. It's the same thing with actors of this caliber.
When you were writing this, I always am sort of curious about the process for you. How do you do it? Where do you sit? What implements are you using? How does it work for you? In what way is it? Was this an easy one or a hard one?
This was a hard one. They're all hard ones. This was a particularly hard one. If you did in terms of my process, if you did a pie chart of the process, very little of it would look like writing. Very little of it would be typing. Most of it is thinking. Most of it is banging your head against the wall. A good chunk of it is, in this case, is research, spending a lot of time with all of the characters who were in the film, not Steve, of course, he passed away, all of the real-life people who were represented by characters in the film, and then several dozen others.
And you went beyond. You went to Joanna more, you went to the daughter more.
I did. Lisa, Steve's eldest daughter, did not participate in Walter Isaacson's book because her father was alive at the time, and so she declined, as did John Scully for other reasons. Scully had kind of just gone quiet after he left Apple. It was kind of a traumatic experience for him when it happened. But I was just lucky that Lisa was willing to talk to me, and that Scully got remarried. He's in his 70s now, and he got married to a wonderful woman named Diana, who decided it was time for him to get up off the mat and tell his story right at the moment that I was telling this story. So that timing really worked out. Joanna is not a huge character in Walter's book, but one of the mentions of Joanna is that she won this award that Apple gave out every year for the person who could stand up to Steve the best. She won it 3 years in a row, so I knew that she was somebody I was going to want to meet. And then once I met her, she's so compelling that I knew that I wanted this character to be in whatever story it was I was going to end up telling.
How did you come up with the structure? Because it's so audacious, so amazing. I mean, was it a eureka moment? Was it, and the repetitive nature of those characters coming back each time?
Before I knew what I wanted to do, I knew what I didn't want to do, and that was a biopic. A cradle-to-grave story where you land on the greatest hits of the character along the way.
Isaacson already did that.
Right. That's journalism. That's a dramatized Wikipedia page right there. And I wanted to do something else. I didn't know what, but like I said, I spent a long time talking to all of these people who knew Steve very well, loved Steve a lot, and points of friction started to become clear to me between Steve and Woz, between Steve and Scully, between Steve and Lisa, between Steve and Chrisanne, and so on. And I happened to just trip over a thoroughly benign piece of information one day, which was that during rehearsals for the 1984 launch of the Macintosh, they couldn't get the Mac to say hello. And it was really important to Steve that the Mac say hello, and everybody was scrambling around late at night during rehearsal to get the Mac to say hello. And I'm, a playwright by nature. I'm kind of faking my way through movies and television, and so I like claustrophobic spaces, confined spaces. I like compressed periods of time, especially when there's a ticking clock. And so I thought, well, what if, you could get a whole first act out of, they've got to get the Mac to say hello. You can make it more of an emergency if it doesn't happen a week before the launch, but it's happening minutes before the launch. And then, while Steve has this headache to deal with, give him other headaches to deal with, but make them personal headaches, make them different kinds of headaches, everything from his daughter and her mother to Woz wanting this and Andy Hertzfeld wanting that, and in other words, dramatize these points of friction that I discovered along the way.
And therefore enlighten us on each aspect of his personality.
That's right.
Strong and weak.
Exactly right. With the relationship with his daughter being the emotional center of the movie, that nothing's going to be solved until at least a step is taken toward solving that. And I thought, use a traditional a three-act structure, make the entire movie 3 scenes, all taking place backstage in the moments before a product launch, and don't make this the Steve Jobs story. Don't make this the life of Steve Jobs. He doesn't have to be diagnosed with cancer at the end of the movie.
And Scully's the father figure
Exactly.
who betrays him. Mm-hmm. And then it takes on a Shakespearean quality in the sense that it's not based entirely on fact.
That's and let me be clear about that part of it. There weren't, I didn't distort or invent any facts about Steve Jobs for the movie, even if I were inclined to do that.
You compressed, Joanna wasn't there at the third thing.
That's right. The big fact that the one big fact I made up was that Steve did not have confrontations with the same 5 people 40 minutes before everybody.
No, he did not. Nor did Woz call him an asshole in front of an entire auditorium.
No.
He called someone else. He did it to someone else.
What Woz really did was call Scully and say, "Would you please convince this guy to acknowledge the Apple II team?" I did not feel like I was disturbing history, disturbing truth, by having Woz play that scene with Steve instead of Scully. This is truly how Woz feels. This is truly, it's my take on how Woz feels, my take on how Steve feels. Now point them toward each other and play this scene. It's what a playwright would do. A journalist isn't allowed to do that.
A writer creates characters, and they take over, do they not?
They do. And this was unambiguously my subjective take on Steve Jobs and these events. And I think that any artist, the obligation is to be subjective, whereas a journalist's obligation is to be objective.
Totally agree. Did you realize, as you were saying, wow, this is really cool, I'm going to write this is going to be, a bitch, but it's going to be fun. Did you realize that Amy Pascal was going to have a cow eventually? Just in terms of, and we all know this because of the Sony hack, unfortunately, but because she recognized its blatant uncommerciality.
Yeah, but here's why Amy Pascal is awesome and has taken more undeserved hits than anybody should ever have to. I've never before auditioned an idea for the studio. They'll hire me to write something, and I write it and deliver the script. I wouldn't say, no, here's my idea, what do you think? But I did in this case, because I felt that what I was about to do was so different from what they were expecting me to do. And Amy could not have been more supportive. She said, go, 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 go. And when she got the script, she didn't change her tune at all. She loved the script and badly wanted to make the movie. But she did recognize that it was not going to have, that it was going to have narrower commercial appeal than other movies, and simply wanted it done for a number.
It was fascinating, all of those emails, I have to say, to see how she was sort of twisting herself into a pretzel. She wanted to, but she had to meet certain numbers. But do you agree with the idea that she was in a position as a studio chief that was vulnerable, given the track record at the box office at that moment, and after the hack even more vulnerable, that you needed a studio chief who was on a roll to be able to just say yes?
Yes.
Because it was risky.
Incredibly risky. I do not begrudge her a bit. Her needing to put the movie and turn around eventually. Which, by the way, and I'm not advocating that anybody go read those stolen emails from the Sony hack, so I can't believe I'm saying this, but if you look at the stolen emails from the Sony hack, you'll see that not 24 hours later after she did it, does she regret it and try to get it back. This is clearly a woman in agony because she wants to make this movie and just needs to be able to justify it commercially. And I listen. I talk to Amy all the time now. We're about to do a movie together, in fact. But
which one is it?
It's called Molly's Game,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really excited about it. I finished writing the script. It's my first movie with a female protagonist. I think it's a really cool story. But when our third weekend, after we had done so great in limited release the first 2 weekends, and then the third weekend came, and all of us were kind of frozen in horror of about once an hour you get box office reports of what's going on across the country.
They widened it too fast. They made a mistake.
You know what? You're much more of an expert on that than I am. That's what Scott says. It's what Danny says. You're probably right about that. But I wrote to Amy and said, you're the big winner this weekend, and very much to her credit. And she wasn't aw-shucksing it. She said, I take no pleasure from this at all. This is heartbreaking. Amy's the real deal.
No, I understand all of this. Best of enemies. I love the idea that you have... Explain what you... Quickly, because they're about to drag you away.
Okay. Which part did you want me to explain?
What are you going to write on that? You've got the rights to the documentary.
Well, Best of Enemies is a documentary that premiered at Sundance this past January.
Yeah.
And it is about a thing that happened in history that I didn't know about at all, which is simply, in 1968, ABC News was in last place, going into the political conventions, the Republican convention in Miami, the Democratic convention in Chicago. They needed to pull a rabbit out of a hat, and so they got, this doesn't exist today, but two famous intellectuals, two celebrity intellectuals.
One of them's a Republican.
William
a
F.
smart,
Buckley.
well-informed, well-educated Republican.
Could you imagine just Buckley on the stage with William F. Buckley from the right, Gore Vidal from the left, and they would debate each other for 5 minutes on live TV every night during ABC's convention coverage.
So you're a dialogue wonk.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine these characters in a movie.
Yes. I really enjoy. It's a bit of it's a job of work, but I enjoy writing about people who are smarter than I am. That it's fun.
And you've always been a political junkie, obviously.
I'm not particularly politically sophisticated. I enjoy the day-to-day learning about it and reading about it. But what happened with these two guys, they didn't just disagree with each other politically, they hated each other's breathing guts. On the 8th day, it boiled over, and they lost it, the two of them, on live TV. And there are many people who consider that the beginning of, needless to say, ABC won the ratings race. And there are a lot of people who consider that the beginning of sort of food fight television.
But you're going to write something.
Yeah, I optioned the documentary, and I'm going to write a feture.
But Maggie's, the other one comes first.
Molly's Game comes first, yes. That script is finished, and we're putting it up on its feet now.
And you're back in the movies as opposed to TV.
Yeah, I love TV, and I hope I'll do another series sometime soon. But what I don't miss about TV is if you're writing a movie or you're writing a play and it's not going well, you're stuck, you've driven into a snowbank, you can stop. You can put it down. You can call the producer or the studio, whoever's waiting for it, and say, I know I said I was going to deliver in June. It'll probably be July or August because I'm stuck. I've run into a snowbank. TV, you have air dates. You have to write when you're not writing well, which feels like walking around with glass in your shoes. And then you have to point a camera at it and show it to everybody, and that's a tough pill to swallow. I would love to have another idea for a TV series. There's a lot that I love about it, but